We are live from Auckland Park in Johannesburg. This is It's Topical as we commemorate Africa Month tonight. Why? Because it gives us a chance to reflect on some of the challenges that Africa still faces, also the progress that has been made thus far. I hail from the Kingdom of AmaZulu, KwaZulu-Natal, but I think most importantly, I am an African.
I am an African. I owe my being to the hills and the valleys, the mountains and the glades, the rivers, the deserts, the trees, the flowers, the seas, and the ever-changing seasons that define the face of our native land. Whatever the setbacks of the moment, nothing can stop us now.
A very good evening to you, South Africa, and those watching around the world. My name is Blain Herman, and this is It's Topical, our sign language interpreter tonight is Lengwe. It's the tail end of Africa Month, but it's never too late to embrace cultural diversity. For me, this is just a symbol of my appreciation for another African culture as we celebrate our Africanness tonight. But we also tackling very, very serious issues. And as always, to help me do that, the central voice is here. On the program, we thank you very much indeed for your time. They are from all corners of South Africa, all corners of the continent via Zoom with pertinent views on the issues of the day. Some are here to observe the discussions tonight. Others will jump in and add their input. So, to the issue at hand. Earlier this year, President Cyril Ramaphosa signed into law legislation aimed at strengthening efforts to end gender-based violence. The president has assented to the Criminal Law, Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Act, the Amendment Bill, the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Bill, and the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill. But the question is, to what extent is the legislation survivor-centered? And how can we effectively combat this pandemic? Walk with me while we get ready for the roundup. It is a pandemic, isn't it? Meaning it's global. But the question is, does the citizens' demands, is it fully cast in the law? And how does the law effectively combat gender-based violence, as well as try to make it more difficult in order for perpetrators to escape justice? That's what we need to make it more difficult for perpetrators to escape justice. Answers up next. Now time for your roundup. Well, in a roundup this week, it's a matter that involves fraud, corruption, money laundering, and the contravention of the Public Finance Management Act. That's the allegations. This is five former Transnet executives, including former CEO Siyabonga Gama, appeared at the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court sitting at the Specialized Crimes Court. The five former executives received bail ranging from 25,000 Rand to 250,000 Rand. The NPA says more arrests can be affected soon, as the matter is expected to resume in July. Take a look. All right, let's control, if you can take it.
They stand accused of having benefited about 93.4 million. So Transnet paid 93.4 million to a company called Trillion Asset Management. And we're saying that the former government's officials colluded or assisted in making sure that those funds were actually paid to Trillion. And a payment that was done in December after a similar payment had been made to another company, which we're alleging is Regiment's Capital, which was paid for similar work done earlier on in that year in 2016.
Now, to a story that's left the entire Ratanga community distraught. It's about the death of three brothers in the area near Heidelberg. 16-year-old Leflogo Nolo, 13-year-old Katleho, and 6-year-old brother Tebogo all died after allegedly consuming a poisoned energy drink, allegedly given to them by their father. Now, the 4-year-old child, or rather the 4th child, who was 10 years old, is recovering in a local hospital. Gauteng police have since opened a case of murder and attempted murder.
He bought the energy drink and mixed it with alparim, a rat poison. He waited on the mother to leave the house. After she left the house, he mixed an energy drink and fed it to 4 of the children because the youngest child refused to drink it. It seems that this is something he planned because he also mixed the poison and fed it to the family dog.
Now, please be warned that the following story contains graphic content and may be offensive to sensitive viewers, but it's the main topic of the day. We have to discuss it. It talks about the ongoing issue of gender-based violence in this country. Namhla Mtwa's death is the one that will remain in the country's conscience for many years until the killer is behind bars. A high-level delegation from the South African police visited the 35-year-old victim's home in the Eastern Cape. Police Minister Becky Cele says a high-level investigation team is on the ground tracing any leads on Mtwa's brutal killing a month ago. This is what he had to say.
Namhla was felt by many of us. She was felt by many of us, was felt by friends, was felt by maybe some members of the family, was by the community and all that. We have checked, we'll go and thoroughly check that there is no record of her being reported or her reporting. She might not have been in the space of her reporting, but somebody somewhere knew what was happening. When you look at those pictures that are on the social media, some of them terrible.
In the Word on the Street feature this week, we found out your views on this war being waged on women, children and other vulnerable groups in South Africa. Here are residents of Cosmos City in Johannesburg with their views on the GBV pandemic currently gripping the country.
Gender-based violence ndi vona ngari nne nga kusedzera kwanga khose one ndi ngauri vafumakadzi avachathonifha musalauno rufuna batho ba banna ai avachato nalo nga manda
batho ba bontate ba tlameha ho rutwa hore na motho wa mme o tshwara jwang le batho ba bomme ba tlameha ho rutwa na motho wa ntate o bua le ena ka tsela e jwang ba tlameha ho ithuta ha bua le motho wa ntate o mo araba ka tsela e hlomphileng hore le ena tla ska ba le ntwe emo provoka nga qeteletsa yentse ntwe eo
ya ndikubona ngari muvhuso u tea u tovisa tshigwevho tsha thambo ndi hone zwithu zwi ḓo luga.
Generation ya rona e kwatile ba gaetso, generation ya rona e bitter, e angry, ene bana ba rona ha ba sa tseba love, ba confused. Bontate ra lekopa re tlogeleng bona re ntse re khosa dintwa mo matlu dilo tse di khosiwa ke gore rona batsadi ha re le rona ha re tlotla. If nka be re respecta rona re itse go itlotla re ka be re itse gore South Africa ne tla sia.
When women do better than men become very angry and violent. There's a whole lot of anger amongst our male folks, and I think it is mainly because of the confusion around what used to be a real man versus a modern man, as you always say, cosmopolitan.
Better Kaiwan, report or walk away. Don't allow men to do izinto ongazithandiyo all in the name of love. I say no to gender-based violence. I say have a voice. Say no. Say I can't. Say I won't. I'm going to tell on to you, and then the stigma or the percentage will definitely go down. Thank you.
The true voices on the ground that will maybe help us shape the strategy on how to beat this. Would you say the nation is more or less galvanized against ending this crisis? Here I'm talking about communities, government, religious groupings, the judiciary, parliament. We're going to get some answers next. We're going to take a quick break. Our conversation with our digital audience coming up. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical, gender-based violence. The question is, how do we intensify the fight against gender-based violence and femicide? In order to answer that, we need to look at the extent of gender-based violence in this country. Let's discuss what we know and what we need to know. Women in South Africa, they are regularly dying violent deaths, often at the hands of their loved ones and someone who they knew. I'm going to take a look closely at some of the cases, give you some context as to where we stand. This is crime statistics with regards to the fight against gender-based violence, and it's from October to December 2021. Over 900 women were murdered, and of that, over 230 were directly linked to domestic violence. Have a look at this. October to December 2021, over 11,000 rape cases were reported. Now, this is an average, and this sticks in your mind. This translates to 123 cases a day. It's a shocking figure. Now, with regards to this is a report, the 2021 Statistics South Africa report, and it says 1 in 5 women had experienced physical violence by a partner. So, knowing this, what can be done now to put paid to these despicable acts? How can we take this forward? What do we know is at the core of gender-based violence? Let's take it to the better minds, bring in our digital audience to answer some of these pertinent questions. We need answers. We need them fast. What is not working? What is working? Has there been any change? Let's put up our digital audience. Let's see if we can get their thoughts. Welcome, everybody. This is no doubt an important topic. We've had so many conversations. What can we do differently, Anele?
Thank you so much for having me on this important discussion. I think one of the most critical things that we need to see our government doing is that taking drastic decisions that respond to the crisis that we find ourselves is going to be the only solution that I believe is going to change the landscape where killing of women and children has become a normalized situation in our country. One of the most important things that I believe strongly that must be introduced is a conditional death penalty. Here is why I believe that a conditional death penalty will curb the scourge of gender-based violence. We do have repeating offenders who get paroled. They get out of jail, they having not even served the maximum of the minimum sentence that they were sentenced of. After they get out, they go back and become repeated offenders. What does the community have apparatus or conditions that they can use to make sure that the offender does not repeat? Nothing. So if we bring back a conditional death penalty, specifically to address the gender-based violence issues, we will not be moving from a silent law that does not respond to victim issues, because at the time of gender-based violence that gets committed, it should be the victim that is at the center, not the other way around. Both from a point of dealing with the criminal justice system, it is obsessed with the perpetrator, not the victim. So a conditional death penalty will definitely go a long way in curbing the problem.
Riahile, do you agree with regards to a harsher sentence for perpetrators? What do you reckon?
I think that before we even look at what the law can do, the first thing that we need to understand as a society is that we need to be cognizant of the ideology that has eroded our society. We need to establish what the cause of this gender-based violence is, because obviously we can't just treat the symptoms instead of acknowledging what the root problem is. And in this case, things such as ideology, for me, are things that we need to look into before we can even treat the symptoms, because we need to understand why there is such a need for extreme measures. Why are there escalating numbers of gender-based violence? What is the main cause of this? And if we look into things such as ideology, for me, I will single out an ideology such as religion, for example, which continues to inform people rather that women are inferior, for example. I know that gender-based violence can be experienced by both men and females, right? Men and male and females. But females are more prevalent to gender-based violence because of the ideology that has been placed within society that women are inferior, for example. Members of the LGBTI community have been outcast by ideology, such as religion, right? They have been said to be inferior. And obviously there's some form of hatred that is posed towards this minority community within society. And so when we look at the cause of these prevailing causes of hatred and division within society, I think that's when now the law can now establish what needs to be done instead of just acting on the symptoms.
So changing mindset, changing or looking deeper into ideology. Sunshine Miende, jump in, please, for us. With regards to, I was listening to a gender activist many years ago who was saying, and according to the research they did, at the core of GBV, gender-based violence, is childhood experiences as well as witnessing violence. Agree or disagree?
Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity. For me, mainly, I agree with the previous speaker that we need to, first of all, deal with the cause of gender-based violence. So for me, mainly, in particular, domestic violence, it's more of women being financially dependent on their partners. Because if you look at some of the cases of GBV, women do not want to walk away from the relationship or from the abusive relationship because of financial dependency. So for me, as part of the solutions, there's a need for more empowerment in terms of women so that they're able to walk away from the relationship. But over and above that, there are structural and systematic challenges that we need to deal with as a country in order for us to address GBV cases. Because currently we're dealing with the symptoms. We need to be more on preventative aspect or having more social partners. I don't think that it's a responsibility of government only to ensure that there's reduction in gender-based violence, but I think it also comes to the issue of a private sector also playing a role towards creating more job opportunities to cover women. Thank you so much.
Jabulani, let me bring you in, and I want to be a bit blunt. As a man, why do we beat our women? Why do we want to kill our women? Why do we think that we have power over women? What's wrong with us? You can unmute, Jabulani. There we go.
Oh, good day. Good evening, sir. Thank you for the opportunity that you guys have given me here. First of all, my name is Jabulani Skota. I'm a founder of a company called Basadi Shield. We mainly deal with ultra-portable self-defense equipment for women and children who are able and of disabled conditions. So as a business, our aim is to radically reduce the gender-based violence statistics in South Africa by providing ultra-portable self-defense equipment. So you can please just visit our website at www.basadishield.co.za, visit our LinkedIn page and see
for you, it
what
is
we've been trying
self-defense. But what I'm trying to get is at what is the problem here in terms of men? I know the solution might be self-defense, but how do we stop it before it gets to that point?
Okay, before it gets to that point, for me, is that we need to educate the new generation and on how to properly, voice themselves, so that this pandemic can be at ease. Right. I believe that's the main issue.
Digital audience, stay with us. It's an important topic. We're going to come back to you guys in a short while. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got some important guests lined up for you to talk to us about what is at the core of gender-based violence, and also, more importantly, what's the solutions. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. Please engage with us with regards to our topic of the day. We're talking about gender-based violence, but we're also asking you, are you a survivor? And what sort of resources were availed to you in order to get out of that situation? At It's Topical SABC on Twitter, you can give us a call, 011-714-5958. You can remain anonymous if you want, but we want to hear your story. Maybe your story can help others. Our digital audience is still with us. We want to engage with them with regards to our question of the day. Topical, thank you very much indeed for coming on. I hope I got your name right because I can't see it at the bottom of my screen, but talk to us about where do you think the problem lies, but also the solution?
Good evening to everybody, and thank you for having me. My name is Topical, but thank you very much for the attempt. Where does the problem lie? Honestly, and this does sound like a very simplistic answer, but the problem lies in a patriarchal system. If I really truly believe that when you eradicate patriarchy, you're a step closer to equality.
But how do you eradicate patriarchy?
Perhaps I would say more education, but also greater participation on the part of men.
Right.
I do think that this, for a long time, it's been a conversation obviously propelled by women, and you get men when you try to have a discussion with them, and they'll tell you that they don't know, which part of the conversation they're invited to.
Yeah.
And I always try to emphasize that we're not going to reach a solution without their involvement.
Right.
Men and women need to work at it together to eradicate patriarchy, because it's a system that affects us all, and it's a system we were all raised in that we all know. But there are things to unlearn and learn better ways of doing things.
Let's take it to a person that knows the law well. Professor Sibanda from the University of Limpopo joins us as well. Prof, good to have you on the program. Talk to us about the law. I listed a number of legislation at the beginning of the show with regards to the criminal law, the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Bill, the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill. But the question is, are they survivor-centered, this legislation? What's your take?
Good evening, and then good evening also to my fellow panelists. Let me start by saying really we need a more or less fragmented, a holistic approach to trying to eradicate gender-based violence, this particular scourge. And when you talk about the law is there, but it cannot be a panacea to this particular problem. Hence, yes, of course, we're talking about, is the law victim-centric? And the three pieces of legislation that we talked about earlier on, they are trying to bring that particular element of centering, the solution, around the victim, particularly leaving out or not focusing too much on the perpetrator. For instance, in terms of the pieces of law, is that it's not only now under your criminal, cases or criminal laws, your magistrate courts in other cases are now mandated or to look into appointing intermediaries, the people that will be be the funnel or the middle point for victims to be able to participate fully into this particular process of finding solutions to their problems. But earlier on, you talk also about how really do we look into this, talking about holistic approach. I'm of the view that there are a number of things that we can do. Just quickly, for instance, our government must stop talking more and do a lot.
Right.
In 2012, there was a talk about the femicide, so there was talk about the National Council on Gender-Based Violence. That fell flat on its face because nothing happened. We talked about the lack of resources. We talk about poor capacity, lack of political support or will. And then you go now to the law, the criminal justice system. It needs to be effective. It needs to be efficient.
Yeah.
It needs to be sensitive to victims. The latest Constitutional Court case. Remember the case of Yawa. What has happened of Kawa? What happened here? You had the police did a very sloppy job in terms of investigating this particular crime that happened in Gabeza in 2010. And then again, on the other hand, you had the Minister of Police saying this cannot be held liable to what happened to the victim. The Constitutional Court said, no, we cannot, because if that is the case, we are going to shy away from imposing liability on the law enforcement or the criminal justice system. Right. Then the victims will be inhibited or will be chilled. from attending.
We have to pause it there. We need to welcome our SABC2 viewers. Annelile, I see you. Tato, I see you as well. Jade, we're going to come back to you as well. Stand by. Let's welcome our SABC2 viewers who have joined us. It's good to have you onto the program. Such a pleasure having you on board. My name is Blain Herman, and our sign language interpreter this tonight is Triforce Ntsulengwe. This is It's Topical. It's a program where you have your say on the burning issues of the week. And as always, our central voice is on the program. They're called our digital audience. Lovingly, we call them. They are joining us from all corners of the world via Zoom with pertinent views on the issues of the day. Now to that issue at hand. The question we're asking you, what is at the core of gender-based violence? Are you a survivor of GBV? What resources were availed to you that helped you leave that situation? So you can please engage with us. On Twitter, we at It's Topical SABC. We'll also take some of your comments as well. You can give us a call. The number is 011-714-5958. WhatsApp 078-459-1819. Let's continue our conversation with our digital audience with regards to finding solutions to this problem. We had a plethora of other conversations. This time it needs to change. Let's bring in our digital audience back into the conversation. Annelile, where do you see the problem lying currently in South Africa? Is it a mindset thing? Do we need to get our children, start with them first, and then build to a better place? What's your take?
Good evening. My name is Annelile. Thank you for having me. Look, my solution is let's just disrupt the whole thing and start afresh.
Go on.
Because just collapse the whole world, because it's so integrated within our systems. It's so integrated within the culture and religion that we all subscribe to. Whatever belief system you subscribe to, it's embedded within, And the one thing about GBV is that it's not about sex. It's not, rape is not about sex. It's about power. It's about authority. Right. And we've been raised in a system that simply says that women are not companions or equals. They are objects. They are like children. I've heard men say no, my wife is like my child. It's ludicrous. Yeah. However, I do think that the justice system, the police system, because I have done this, I have gone to SAPS to report a rape for research for my book. Right. It's called Igoli Dreams. And the behavior, and this is urban, very good police station, but the behavior that you receive there is not allowing. The system actually has to violate you in order to prove that you were actually.
I want to talk a bit more, Annelile, with regards to something called secondary victimization. Pause that thought. Many South Africans are indeed calling for harsher sentences for the perpetrators of gender-based violence. We took to the streets of the Eastern Cape as well as Johannesburg to listen to the different views on this pandemic. And this is what some of the law-abiding citizens had to say. Take a look.
Dilapha nje ngizocela umthetho ungakhe uthathe icala usincedise. Ndiyamfuna umbulali womntanami, ndiyafuna ukwazi uba kwakwenzekeni.
I-director iye yandi-assaulta and xa ndiripota le nto imanager yam told me ubana this is beyond me because lo mntu unemali, lo mntu is connected and utsho mkabheka icala.
Njengoba ndihlala nomakazi ndiye esikolweni everyday ndibuye kwangena umuntu endlini ukungena kwakhe kwafika 100 wandihlaba ukuze angakwazi ukundibulala kuba ndikwazile ukuzilwela ndena bese-ke ndihlaba apha emnweni ndihambile ndaya esinawe ndafike ndayozenza zonke izinto ndisuka apha esentral kwathiwa hayi uzawubanjwa wabanjwa ndixelelwe ngethuzi ezika-april kwathi ubanjiwe ndathi mna okay ubanjiwe nyani olwesithathu ndabe ndimbona ndisuka esikolweni.
I believe that men are violating women because they want to feel most powerful. Some of the women, they're afraid to talk because they feel most loved.
Women are not as woke and are not as aware of how powerful we are. And also men are so entitled, honestly.
They still want to practice the traditional gender roles where they are in control. So as a result of that, they think women are competing with them.
Those are the realities on the ground. Look, we need all the help we can in order to get to the bottom of this, to the core of this. And in studio, we are now joined by the Chief Director at the Department of Social Development in Gauteng and also a founder of the Men's Forum, Bongani Ngomane. Sir, thank you very much indeed for your time. It's good to have your better mind on the program to get some solutions. It needs to start with us, isn't it? Because we are the perpetrators as men. Talk to us about your experience and where the problem lies.
The problem, first of all, greetings to everyone at home. The problem is really multi-pronged. It's influenced by many factors, but we can summarize it between socio-economic issues and spiritual issues. Because some of these crimes against women, clearly they are influenced by evil spirit. That's all you can say, because you just don't understand what people go through when they do that. And sometimes when you interact with men who are abusers, they will tell you that sometimes they just get possessed and they don't know what they're doing.
You see, some may argue, and the pushback for that is that if you talk in that manner, it kind of says that we don't have a solution to this if you go that route. Some will say we need to change the way we talk. Don't call it a scourge. You call it a scourge, it seems like we can't get a grip on the situation. Where does the solution lie here with regards to if we have to take it further?
The solution, one, it's on how we socialize men and boys in our society. When boys grow up, they need to be socialized in how to live better with women, with girls. Generally, they must strive for a peaceful society. That's the socialization. And also our educational system, it should assist. We are pushing or advocating for what we call peace studies to be introduced in our curriculum, so that when our children grow up, they grow up knowing and appreciating the value of living in a peaceful society. That's one solution. It's on education, it's on training, but also another aspect of it, it's on the economic aspect. We need to empower women so that they are economically independent from men, because the biggest trap of many women, it's economic dependence to their perpetrators or to their violators. So we are saying if we can educate men, empower boy child, but also empower women to be independent and to be self-sufficient, we hope then as a society we can achieve something. Lastly, on solutions, our justice system needs also to be proactive. We need justice system that will educate the community, the society of their rights, but also make perpetrators understand the consequences of their action. You know? So that justice system does not just wait for a victim to come, but they should go to communities and inform people.
That's the nub of it, isn't it? It needs to stop before it gets to that point. Let's bring in our digital audience. Gogo, if you can unmute.
Yes,
I
it's Anele.
Talk to you. Anele, just pause it for a bit. I'll come back to you in a bit. Gogo, talk to us about what you heard from Mr. Ngomane saying the possible solutions are. Do you agree? Gogo, if you can unmute. There we go.
Oh, thank you so much for having us in this very important discussion at the current moment when gender-based violence cases have gone so high. Our view is that we need to eradicate the stigma associated with gender-based violence. We live in a society whereby it's a shame to be abused, as if you had a choice. nobody chooses to be abused. If we had a choice, we will take away that shame, and we will walk freely like any other person. Again, we need to also look at the activists themselves. We have organizations that are like Abafaz Pambili that are doing splendid job, and they are not in the media there, yet they are hands-on. I have seen 99% of the activists who are in this job because of media coverage. Once the media goes or the media leaves the story, you don't see a single activist on that specific case. I want to also speak on the politicization of gender-based violence. When we have a case of gender-based violence, we see people coming to support the victim, dressed in EFF regalia, dressed in ANC regalia, dressed in DA regalia. Come on, guys, those are not your rallies where you campaign. We are talking about a serious case, gender-based violence. You don't come to support a victim dressed in your regalia as if you are looking for votes. So politicians also need to be shaken, because they politicize, they use gender-based violence to campaign. We saw also the cases about Uinene River, now it's in Nhlanhla. We as a society, we tend to sing about a case. Once the media stop covering that case, we're also gone.
Look,
perpetrators are very much aware of that.
I get your point. It needs to be in the spotlight all the time, isn't it? Not only when we show it on our screens. Digital audience, stand by. I want to take you to this interesting piece. President Cyril Ramaphosa declared, as you know, gender-based violence a second pandemic in South Africa after the COVID-19. But this has been around for years, since time immemorial, one would say. This is evident as many women are murdered and abused on a daily basis in this country. Our producer, Clela Mkoko, visited two survivors. Watch.
Between October and December 2021, 902 women were murdered in this country, with 232 of these cases linked directly to domestic violence. According to Stats SA, at least 1 out of 5 women in South Africa has experienced some kind of physical violence by a partner. We are now standing in front of Ikaele Temba, which is a home which houses women who have been abused by their partners. Marjorie Gonzana, a 32-year-old mother of 2, was abused for 9 years.
Take us through the first day that he hit you. I didn't want to go out with him. I just wanted to go out with my friends. So it became the thing of, yeah, your friends, I don't like your friends. All of a sudden, he hit me in front of my son. I still remember my son protecting me. He jumped on top of him and bit his ear.
So after 9 years, what got Marjorie to finally want to?
He hit me in front of my young daughter. She's 2 years old and she was crying. So the image of me on the floor and her crying, because when I looked up I could see her crying, so it was Naaman.
Lindiwe Mdaniso was with her boyfriend, who is an ex-convict, for 11 years. She says it was a loveless relationship.
Lindiwe date this guy. Serve something like 15 years actually. Utsotsi lobuti bafumana balele aqotho unana ngifila ukuthi no ayeke uthulele nale ntombazana uzolala nami like but ubudoba usebenzisa lonkani ipower yamadoda then lento yenzayo guy it's a rape athi ya ubuti uzithembile ndithi ende uzixeke ukuthi yaziwa amapolisi.
It's not all gloom and doom though, because there is help for victims of gender-based violence.
Most of the women are brought here by police. Before they can be accommodated in the shelter, we also assess their medical needs.
There are 123 rape cases that are reported in the whole country on a daily basis. In 2020, President Cyril Ramaphosa declared gender-based violence as South Africa's second pandemic. And he called on all South Africans to take this very seriously. As we speak, a 15-year-old girl from Mount Aleph is fighting for her life in hospital after she was brutally raped and her eyes taken out by her perpetrator. For It's Topical, my name is Lela Mkhuqo in Johannesburg.
All right, important reporting there from Lela. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to still engage our guests as well as our digital audience. Solutions driven. That is It's Topical. Quick break. More next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. It's a program that puts you, our viewers, at the center of the discussions. Please have your say regarding the burning issues of the week. Interact with us on all our social media platforms. Gender-based violence, that's our topic today. We asked you for your comments with regards to what is at the core of gender-based violence. You've sent it to us. Take a listen.
The main cause of the gender-based violence is a rivalry between the couple and the 50-50% in a household. Moreover, it usually occurs when a man wants carnal desire from his wife. Even though I have never been a victim, but to avoid this, more submission must come from a woman. More submission must come from a woman.
Core of gender-based violence, it's when you are in a relationship that you pretend to be happy whereas you are not, just to please your partner. Yes, I am a gender-based violence survivor. I was abused physically and emotionally. For me to survive GBV, I got counseling and I was advised to leave my partner. That's how I survived GBV.
We really appreciate your comments. Please keep sending it through to us. Now to our citizen journalism feature. It's an insert where we offer you a platform to tell your inspiring story in your own words. And this week we handed over the microphone to Thabile Chauke, who is a survivor of multiple sexual attacks. So after multiple attempts to end her own life, Thabile began an empowering chapter in her life, going to schools and preaching the gospel of activism and that of God. Here's her story.
Hi everyone, my name is Thabile Chauke. At the age of 18, something happened to me. I got raped. My mom and my dad one day and my stepfather, they called me for a meeting and they told me this bad news. They told me that my mom, this is how she conceived me. She got raped as a teenager. That's how she conceived me. That crushed me a lot growing up as a teenager. I had a lot of anger and bitterness. Sometimes I could blame myself. I thought nobody loves me, nobody cares about me. I had a very low self-esteem. I became rebellious, bunking school, smoking, drinking, taking drugs. I started with my foundation 2020, the reason being because of the things that I experienced. I felt that no one was paying attention to me, no one was giving me that love and all that, so I want to give back to young people. I love working with young people. Every Monday to Friday, every day, everywhere we travel everywhere around South Africa, motivating and preaching to the kids. I need the kids out there to speak up. Whatever they're going through, they need to speak up. Be open. Life is too short. Anything is possible. Don't just keep things to yourself. To our fathers, our brothers out there, love your woman. Treat us well, respect us. We need you. You are our pillar. But if you are beating us up, abusing us, and doing all these funny things, we don't know where to go. We say no to abuse.
You know what Ms. Chauke is doing is putting purpose to her pain, speaking out. I want to engage with our digital audience as well as our guest, Mr. Bongani Ngomane, Chief Director at the Department of Social Development in Gauteng. But let's go to the digital audience first. Tato, you've been waiting to have your say. You heard, I hope you heard what Ms. Chauke had just said with regard to speak out, don't keep quiet. Why aren't more women speaking out?
Thank you for the opportunity. Women are not speaking out because they're afraid of being victimized. And when you come out as a survivor of gender-based violence, you're not treated. There is a lot of stigma attached to you. And I think part of the problem is that how we are reporting. I think at the beginning of this show, we spoke about women are dying at the hands of their loved ones. But what are we saying about that lesbian who died last week in the Israel, who was never reported about in the news? What are we saying about people who come from remote areas, who are of sexual minorities, who are not spoken about? So how we report and we speak about these issues is very problematic, because it also shows that we are still moving in the light of heteronormativity. We still, embracing patriarchy in how we speak about these issues. We need to take an intersectional approach when we are speaking about gender-based violence. What I would also like to say is that having a disability predisposes women to the risk of experiences of gender-based violence. And it is not every day that you hear or speak of experiences of persons and women with disabilities around issues of gender-based violence. That is problematic, and I really hope that we get to change the narrative about how we report and who gets to be represented, even in that representation. We need to increase resources for shelters, and then we need to also make sure that there is information and communication channels that are accessible to women and persons with disabilities and all other minorities, sexual minorities.
Tatu, thank you very much indeed. Mr. Ngomane, are we missing the vulnerable groups here? Are we as media to blame in terms of missing the point here, getting to the nub of the situation?
In fact, she is correct that how gender-based violence is reported is missing the link somehow, because it creates the impression that the victims of gender-based violence are only girls and women. However, you've got men and boys who are also, last year alone, we've lost more than 400 boys in South Africa out of violence. You can classify it as GPV, but you can't classify it as GPV, but it's violence towards boys in the form of initiation schools. But also, men and boys suffer gender-based violence when they are in institutions like your prisons. That is underreported. There is a case now in Benoni where a husband was stabbed to death by the wife, but for certain reasons the case was never in the media. We tried to profile that, it did not happen. So truly we need to cover all sectors of the society, all people who are victims.
Let me bring in our digital audience member, Olwe Tutando. Come into this conversation. I want to talk about, are we too invested in the immediate trauma that women and vulnerable groups go through, that we're not looking more into preventative measures here in South Africa? What's your take, Olwe?
Hi for having me. I think firstly my answer to your question would be yes. Because we are a society that is campaign driven, right? We wait for an incident to actually happen in order for us to actually deal with the issues that are affecting us and affecting our neighbors. And I'll give you, for instance, some of the things that Mr. Bongani there in studio is saying. I'm in disagreement with him because they sort of like allow the issues that we are dealing with to sort of like expand and grow. He spoke about how gender-based violence does not only affect females only, but I agree with him 100%. But in the same light, we can't say when there is an issue at hand, that's when you actually raise these issues. For instance, I'll give you an example. I'm a GBV survivor myself. I was raped in 2015 by a guy who decided to break into my house, into my home, back at home in the Eastern Cape. It was correctional rape to protect me because I identify as a homosexual man. And to my surprise, it was saddening rather to actually learn that my case was one of the first cases to be reported in our South Africa, in the South African context. Because majority of the men do not speak out because of the resources that are available to us, and also the stigma attached to being vaccinated, both female and as a man. And then I couldn't help but think about a few other young individuals, young girls for that matter, coming from rural KZN, rural Eastern Cape, who've gone through the same experiences that I've gone through. So we can't now, when we have issues, platforms like these.
I do apologize, but you are indeed putting purpose to pain. And we thank you very much indeed for coming on. We've just run out of time, but thank you very much. We'll get your story as well. We'll post it on our socials, all our digital audience. Thank you so much for contributing as well. I know we need to get your take as much as we can. Also, Bongani, appreciate your time as well. We have to wrap the show. Here's my take. We have witnessed shocking acts of inhumanity. Violence is destroying the fabric of our society. Toxic masculinity. It stems from teaching boys that they need to repress their emotions. They need to act in an aggressively dominant way, that anything other than that makes them weak. It can manifest in acts like bullying, in even catcalling. What is the best way to get through to men, to abandon this boys will be boys mentality, and instead hold other men accountable for misogynistic attitudes and behaviors? As men, our strength needs to be a function of a respect for one another, not a function of the pain that we cause one another. The news continues. Stand by for the Globe. Until next week, take care. Bye-bye.